On the show today, we are going to identify what Pat Kelsey's strategy is going to look like for high school recruiting moving forward, answering questions like what skills is he going to prioritize? Is he going for more college-ready players or players that need some time to develop? We'll answer both of those questions and more on today's episode of Locked On Louisville. Stay tuned.
You are Locked On Louisville, your daily podcast on the Louisville Cardinals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, everyone? Welcome into this Sunday edition of the Locked On Louisville podcast. I'm your host, Dalton Pence. Today's episode brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. And as always, want to personally thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. Just a reminder, the Locked On Louisville podcast is free and available on all streaming services 5 days a week. Your team every day. On today's episode of the show, we are identifying what Pat Kelsey's strategy is going to be for high school recruiting moving forward. We'll also discuss a top 5 prospect taking a visit to Louisville either in August or September. And then to conclude the show, we will dive into a weekly mailbag segment. So obviously, high school recruiting for Louisville has started to ramp up, and for good reason. AAU ball is pretty much coming to a close. So over the past couple weeks, past month or so, with AAU ball in the full swing of things, Louisville and other schools finalizing their rosters for this upcoming season, pretty obviously attention shifted to the 2025 high school recruiting class, where Louisville has offered a plethora of players. In turn, there have been players that have put Louisville high up on their list, players that have spoken highly of the Cardinals coaching staff, and also prospects that have scheduled official visits to Louisville coming up at the end of July, all throughout August, and even into September. So I thought it would be nice to have a segment discussing, well, what is Pat Kelsey's strategy going to be? How similar is it going to be to transfer portal recruiting? And I think that while you can see some similarities and common aspects and common skills that Pat Kelsey's going after, it's different because of the roles that those players are likely going to play. So I kind of broke it down into subsections. There is the overall blanket that is something I want to address. And then you go by position: guards, wings, and big men. And I think that you can go position by position or position group by position group and sort of talk about the skills that he's looking to go after. I will say that the most important thing that needs to be focused on is that Pat Kelsey has made it a clear, crystal clear point of emphasis that a certain player or players have to be culture fits for this program. And I know that culture in a vacuum can sort of be blown out of proportion. But for a program that has been struggling to develop a culture over the past 5 years or so, I think that it's pretty clear that, you needed a coach that is able to come in and get a program to buy into what he wants this program to be. And he's mentioned, competitiveness and this term power of the unit, guys buying into and sacrificing individually for the greater good of the team. This has been put on full display already. There have been a couple of recruitments to where, it seems like rumors have pointed to the Cardinals not wanting to guarantee or promise a starting spot or, go above a certain NIL number. And I think that it's pretty key that Kelsey mentions this almost every time he steps foot in front of a microphone or in front of a podium, in front of an audience, that culture is an everyday thing that you have to work towards. So you best believe that while it can be overrated, it's very clear that this is a huge aspect of the program. So how is this trickling down into recruiting? Well, I think that you're going to see maybe Louisville sort of not go after certain players, not go after players that are looking for handouts, that are looking to be promised playing time or promised a set amount of shots per game. It's about competing. And if you're not willing to come in and compete, then you're probably not the best fit here. Now, granted, Louisville is making it clear that NIL is a huge asset and resource for this program, as it has to be. But it feels like, this isn't just going to be, Louisville is going to be the highest bidder automatically, and that's the end of discussion. No, that's not really the case. So I think that you have to mention culture in this segment, because it will definitely affect recruiting efforts going forward. Is Louisville going to go after more college-ready, immediately productive type players, or is it going to be a thing to where, the transfer portal is going to address the immediate needs, and Kelsey's going to take more swings on developmental pieces? I think that there's going to be a little bit of column A, a little of column B. It's going to be very case-specific. It's going to depend on the scenario and the context, and it's not going to be the same every single recruiting cycle. If one cycle, if he feels like, I can go out and get players that fit what I want for this program and they can come in and compete right away, then that's going to be the case. And I can take a developmental piece or two. And then there's other, years where you can look at this and say, yeah, I've got a really, really good team and I've got a really good rotation. I need to go out and get some developmental pieces for the future. It's going to change. It's fluid. A lot of this is going to be based upon what the roster looks like. And I know that kind of changes because high school recruiting is all year round, and transfer portal is a couple month span in the spring. So it's going to be a little bit of, you have to focus on context, and that's what's going to matter. So I think that with the transfer portal, you do have the opportunity to go get more developmental pieces. You afford yourself that luxury if you have a solid transfer portal haul. But at the end of the day, if you can go out and get a highly ranked player who could also compete right away, then you definitely would do so. In terms of the positions, a couple things, a couple skills that I think are 100%. I think at the end of the day, it's probably pretty obvious that three-point shooting is going to be an emphasis all over the court. Guard play on the wings. If you can go out and get big men like Case and Pryor, like Noah Waterman, that can shoot the three, I think that it is an added bonus. Specifics, all three positions, you're looking for a lot of the same qualities: three-point shooting, the willingness and ability to pass the ball at a solid rate. That's more so of an emphasis for guard play and for the wings, but it's also pretty clear that the big men that Pat Kelsey has got early on and via the transfer portal, there has been an emphasis on being able to be at least a willing passer, because the ball is going to move a ton. There's going to be a ton of shots offensively. You're moving without the ball. You are, utilizing transition, so on and so forth. So guard play, I had three-point shooting as the main one, passing ability, and also the willingness and ability to play off ball. Because with the fast-paced nature of this system, you're not going to see a lot of players being the primary ball handlers. Like, the ball is going to move a lot. There's going to be a lot of movement. Resembles a ton of European-style basketball, to where there's a lot of screens. There's a lot of screens for those screens. There's a lot of screens for the screens for the screens. Obviously hyperbolic, but you kind of understand that there's a ton of motion all the time in the half court and then transition. So a guard's ability to play off the ball and be effective off the ball is key. Wing play, three-point shooting, passing. There's two things that I think are more important for the wings when it comes to recruiting strategy: defensive versatility and switchability. Can you defend multiple positions, and can you do it at a high level? It feels like that's going to be a skill that could very well be one of the more important ones and more sought after skills that Kelsey decides to go after. And also ability to get to the rim. Now, it depends because you can have a player that can do both, but I think that three-point shooting and ability to drive and get to the rim, it sort of depends. Like, it's not like prerequisites. Like, a wing doesn't have to be able to do both of those at a proficient level, but you have to be able to do one of them. You know, Terrence Edwards can do both. Boubacar Traore isn't really a great three-point shooter, but he can get to the rim. Kenai Roots can hit the three-point shot, but he's great at getting to the rim. Javon Hadley has shown that he's a solid spot-up shooter, but he also is great at getting to the rim. So that's the main focus there. Big men, rebounding is a key there. That's also key for wing play as well. Willingness to rebound and being able to be effective on that end. Moving well for their size, ability to get out and move in transition are two focal points of a Pat Kelsey front court, and also defensive versatility, being able to get out on the perimeter and be able to guard at a high level. And also, if you can protect the rim, that's an added bonus. So a lot of these skills are similar. Three-point shooting, passing, moving without the ball, ability to move in transition, you name it. And then there's a couple of, position-specific skills that he's going to go after. I think all those together are going to be focal points. Mainly for me, if you made me pick the top three, I think that three-point shooting, ability to pass and willingness to pass, and moving well without the ball are going to be the three focal points. And then right behind that's the defensive versatility. One player that possesses almost all, actually probably all of those skills that Pat Kelsey's likely going to prioritize is a top three player in the 2025 class who is rumored to be making a visit to Louisville coming up in the next month or so. That is five-star top three prospect Darren Peterson. We'll discuss what he could bring to the Cardinals program coming up momentarily after we tell you about our friends over at Gametime. Coming up here in just over a couple months, I'm going to LA to watch the Chargers play the New Orleans Saints. And I have already secured my tickets via Gametime. And I've been a huge advocate for Gametime when I got New Year's Eve tickets to the Colts Raiders. I decided to go back to Gametime, and I did not make a mistake. The difference is I went and downloaded the app, and I'm actually kind of hating myself for not doing this earlier. When you go to the app, you can see a ton of great features, the priority last-minute deals that you can save up to 60% off buying last-minute tickets, the flash deals, which give you exclusive in-app deals, all-in pricing to where you don't have to get any surprise fees at checkouts, and the panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. It is a fantastic opportunity that you need to take advantage of. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets, whether it's NFL, MLB, with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Cardinal fans, before we get into the second segment, I also want to tell you that if you haven't already, you need to make the switch to Locked On Sports today. It's a free 24/7 streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories in sports without all the screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. Moving right on along, discussing high school basketball recruiting 2025 class specifically, we just identified, what Pat Kelsey's strategy might look like moving forward in high school recruiting. And I think that one player that pretty much possesses every single skill that you're looking for in a prospect is five-star prospect, Darryn Peterson. Darren Peterson is ranked as the number 3 prospect in the class, according to 24/7 Sports Composite, along with being the number 1 combo guard and the number 1 player in West Virginia, plays for Huntington Prep. 6'5" combo guard. And to make matters more interesting, he was actually a player that I didn't know that Louisville was really recruiting. And actually, according to the 24/7 Sports website, I'm not sure that he has an offer from Louisville as we speak. Now, he very well could and just doesn't list it, but I thought that was pretty interesting. But Joe Tipton, who basically at this point is a recruiting insider, national basketball reporter for On3 and On3 Recruits, Tipton said this at the end of June, just over a week ago. He says 5-star prospect Darren Peterson, the number 3 overall recruit in the 2025 class, is planning to visit Kentucky, Louisville, USC, and Washington during August and September. Couple things to look at this. Number 1, it is significant to have a player of that caliber on a visit. Will it be an official visit or not? That is something to focus on moving forward, because it does indeed matter, because you get a little bit more recruiting benefits with it being an official visit. But it is significant that he will be on campus. I will say, though, for a player that is considering Kentucky, has made an official visit to Kentucky, I hope that this situation isn't that he's visiting Louisville or visiting Kentucky and then, I'm going to make the visit to Louisville anyway. It's close. Why not? You get to see another prestigious program across the country. I hope that it's not that type of situation where Louisville is like, let's throw the Louisville visit into there because why not? It's right down I-64. And I'm not saying that it is, but I don't like the way that it's worded, that he's visiting 2 schools that are really close, and then Oregon and Washington that are also really close. That for me, I'm just sitting there and I'm like, I'm sorry, USC and Washington, which I guess that's not really too awful close, but 2 schools on the West Coast. Maybe this is me being paranoid, but with some of the recruitments, I'm trying to think of the recruit's name that visited Louisville and was supposed to be a Louisville lean, and then boom, visits Kentucky right after that. 5-star guy in this class. It's going to drive me nuts now that I can't remember who it is. I'll be able to tell you here in literally just a second. I can't remember the guy's name, and it's really, really driving me nuts at this moment. But I mean, it is what it is. It'll come to my mind when I end this episode, and that'll be that. But nonetheless, I don't want to keep going on in that. There it is, Jason Sanan. He ended up going to Arizona State, but, was a player that visited Kentucky right after Louisville. But nonetheless, I digress. Him making a visit to campus definitely is significant. 6'5" combo guard, projects to be more of a 2 than a 1, although he is a willing passer. And there's not really an aspect of his game that is lacking. He's not, overly quick, but his ability to handle the ball creates separation. 3-level score is at his best when he's driving downhill, utilizing screens, and dissecting the defense that way. There is an attentiveness to the mid-range, tough shot maker, can finish through contact around the rim, 6'5" with his frame, does a good job of utilizing that size and strength while also having the craftiness to score literally inside anywhere of the half court. Doesn't really get sped up or slowed down due to on-ball pressure, gets to his spots, and is just a fantastic player. Has defensive versatility. Being 6'5", I think he could probably guard the 2 or the 3. Has a college-ready frame right away. There is a very specific reasons why he is a top 3 player in this class. He is a likely lottery-level pick, and, he is a fantastic player. He's visited a lot of different places. Kansas, this is the most recent. He has visited Kentucky. He's visited Arkansas. and much, much more. Now, granted, I will say that, he's listed a top 8 at the beginning of January. He ended up opening that recruitment back up and not having a top 8. He's been to Lawrence a couple of times. He's been to Kentucky a couple of times. He's been to Arkansas. This is going to be, nonetheless, a very, very challenging recruitment that Louisville's going to try to get involved with. But it all starts with making sure that visit happens and making sure that Peterson has a good time on campus. So we will obviously keep close, a close level of I don't even know why I can't find the word that I'm looking for. A close level of focus and emphasis on this recruitment as we head into a very key August and September as it relates to high school recruiting. But to conclude this Sunday edition of the show, we're going to dive into a weekly mailbag segment. So stay tuned. Welcome back to this Sunday edition of the Locked On Louisville podcast. Thank you all for making us your first listen every day. As just a couple of housekeeping reminders, this is no longer a true traditional off-season month for the show. There's going to be more episodes than your traditional 12-episode off-season month. There's not going to be 19 total ones, but there's going to be closer to 19 than there will be 12. I did put a poll up on the Locked On Louisville Twitter page earlier today, sort of gauging where interest was, asking which Louisville football series would you like to see me start on this week of the show. We are getting into football talk, and the season is just under 2 months away. The top 15 players ranked series, the 3-part schedule breakdown, and positional preview series. That looks like the positional preview series has a slight lead over the 3-part schedule breakdown. We will begin that series likely on tomorrow's episode of the show, so be sure to stay tuned. But it looks like it's going to be the positional preview series getting started a little bit earlier than anticipated this time around. But to conclude this episode of the show, we're going to dive into the weekly mailbag segment where a couple of great questions were asked, and I'm really excited to answer them. The first one being, how do we feel about CJ May's recruitment up until this point? So CJ May, top 150 football prospect, edge rusher from Alabama, has Louisville in his top 4 with Syracuse, Washington, Auburn, has the commitment date scheduled for next Saturday, July 13th. And we had an episode about a week ago, maybe a couple weeks ago, discussing where Louisville's chances sit. I mentioned that I felt like Louisville was in the driver's seat. Nothing has changed at this point. I think it's mainly a battle between Louisville and Syracuse, with Washington being right outside of that group, and then Auburn on the outside, because I don't think the Tigers are prioritizing May at this point in time in July. So I think Louisville right now is in the driver's seat. One thing to focus on is things change like the wind. Things are fluid. Even when a guy recruits to a school, there's a chance that he's going to decommit and go elsewhere because of the way NIL is structured and so on and so forth. But at this point, on July 7th, 2024, I feel like Louisville's still in the driver's seat in this recruitment, and I feel like it's going to be good news for the Cardinals next weekend. Another football question. Kentucky is seemingly getting a good amount of 4-star level guys, and Louisville is banking on more diamond in the rough type players. Are you discouraged by that? I mean, it doesn't feel good. If we're being completely honest, I mean, that does make me feel like I'm sitting like, damn, man, why can't we recruit like that? And who's to say that, some of those guys at Kentucky don't decommit, and some guys across the country with that level of ranking, they commit to Louisville. CJ May would be a step in the right direction. But it's clear that Louisville is prioritizing the transfer portal, and they've had one of the top transfer portal classes 2 seasons in a row. So I think that Kentucky is more so utilizing the high school recruiting, while Louisville is focused more on the transfer portal. So it's a little bit of a difference in the way that both programs are recruiting. But I do think that high school recruiting could be a little bit better for the Cardinals moving forward. But I am not dissatisfied with the recruiting that Jeff Brom has done. And I told you all that I'm not really going to gauge my thoughts on this class until early signing day or national signing day. So the verdict is still out. But, I mean, it's not the greatest. But, again, to play the devil's advocate, Louisville has been one of the top, recruiting classes in the transfer portal. So you can't really have them both is what I'm trying to get at here. So with the Bahamas trip coming up, who do you feel like is going to rise to the occasion? I mean, I hope everyone is. I'm sort of in the same boat as Pat Kelsey. Like, it's way too early for that conversation. I think that the hope is that everyone plays well and you start to see that chemistry in the Louisville handle business and, in the foreign trip with a couple of wins and, team being that much closer than they were coming into the trip. But, I mean, I can't really signal out anyone in particular or single out anyone in particular. So that's just my thoughts. With CJ May possibly committing, do you think Louisville has a chance at any other highly ranked guys at this time? I think the guys that we've talked about, Ben Hanks, cornerback from Florida, Chastain Brown, offensive lineman from just out of Atlanta, Georgia, are two guys to focus on. But at this point, it doesn't feel like Louisville is in, the top group for multiple other players. So it's just Louisville's class is going to be smaller in numbers. We're at 12 right now, so I would only expect to see like 5 or so more players enter this class. So Flyville 25 is going to be a smaller class in favor of Louisville going with the transfer portal. Louisville is gaining a ton of confidence in – okay, so Louisville is gaining a ton of confidence among national reporters and publications as a possible playoff level team in 2024. Are you agreeing with that trend in momentum? So I think that the question is asking, it's basically saying that, hey, look, Louisville is becoming like a trendy pick for publications, becoming a trendy pick to make the playoff. I mean, again, I mentioned to someone in the comments on the recent episode of the show that I feel like top to bottom, this is a better, more complete roster with more quality depth than last year's was. I look at every single position, and I think that the majority of them got better. And I can't really pinpoint one that has got worse. I mean, maybe you look at the running back committee because you lost Jawari Garendo, but then again, Don Chaney, Maurice Turner, Isaac Brown, Kewan Brown, you've got some really, really solid players to replace the departures. Again, this is a better team. The schedule is better. There's some more challenges, especially on the road, but we will see. I think that this team is going to be better. And I think that, better quarterback play could definitely help too. But that is going to wrap up this Sunday edition of the show. Everyone have a great start to the week. We'll see you right back here